if we're going to talk a bit about the investors. So I want to start with a broad question because I think you are quite unique in that sense. So what's your definition of an investor-friendly company? And then we can also dive into your special relationship with your investors, which seems to have been, it's a great case, right? In how to communicate with investors, keep them posted, create communities, etc. But let's start broad, right? And then we can get deeper afterwards.
Sure. I mean, from our standpoint, it is really about having a clear-cut strategy that people, they understand what to buy into, and then, as I said earlier, walk the talk. Not deviate from the course. I mean, obviously, adjust the course if the external environment changes. Yet to really do what you have promised, because it's important to be reliable, to be consistent, for people to know what the company and management does. I think this is most important. And you can be wrong. You can be wrong with your investment thesis as a management, and as an investor, you can also be wrong by putting the money on the wrong horse. But then at least it was a decision that was clearly cut in stone, so to say, right? That's number one. So walk the talk, be clear, communicate if you adjust the course so people know what's happening, and then try to be, at least in our view, when it comes to shipping, which is so capital intensive and cyclical, to be very rational on capital allocation and not to do funny things. I mean, now obviously we generate a lot of cash. We could also say let's buy 20 new builds, right? Just to grow the fleet, just to be bigger and be considered in the global market as a very big company, etc. But I think that's not what you want to do and what you should do, and what investors should expect: rational capital allocation. And this is not always the case, but to be very clear on that and to tell people what we do, what to do. And that's why we said, there is time to invest capital and there's time not to invest capital that much. And we are, at least at the very moment, in a situation where we want to return capital to investors. And I think this is how you should communicate, and this is how people should understand. And then, as you rightly said, if people who have bought the growth story are not interested in being involved anymore because they want to do 20-30% return, then they should probably consider something else. We are now in a more dividend scenario, yet our dividend yield this year, well, depending on our market cap, but is certainly significant. So you could actually even generate these kind of returns by a dividend, but it's now a more value, more returning capital to investors scheme, and that's what we want to be outspoken about. Be rational in capital allocation, also disciplined in growth at the right point in time, and communicate clearly to the market.
How do you nail this in practice, right? Because obviously, I don't think I will find a CEO that disagree on these great points, but to actually do it in practice is something else, right? So is it about hiring people working at investor relations? Is it about creating a culture from the top and bringing it down to the organizations? Because how do you get this out in practice, which you obviously have managed to do, right?
Well, I think obviously, if you look at corporate culture, leadership has a huge impact, and I would argue builds culture in a way. And in my book, leadership is what it's about: setting the agenda, prioritizing work, managing, leading, delegating projects and work. So it's important on the one hand, and on the other hand, it's also important to provide a sense of a joint vision. And I mean, let's say the modern word of purpose, right? And I think that's important to also inspire the team to follow a route. And I think that's very important. And I think looking at MPCC, for me at least, leadership means leading by example and inspire by leading with a clear vision. And at the same time, on the cultural side, I see culture as a, let's say, pattern or let's say joint beliefs or shared beliefs in the way we get things done. All right, and this is how you, in my view, build leadership and culture jointly. And if you look at MPCC, you always need to look at the main sponsor behind it, because there is a set of let's say DNA of culture already around. And at MPCC, we were able to combine, let's say, the startup mentality in a way. I was the first employee, and now we're 25, working with a lot of partners as service providers. So we have somewhat of a startup mentality, but the fundament of it is the DNA of MPC, and that is the what I would say, the mix of family office, the family behind MPC, and capital market orientation, because MPC Capital as the main sponsor is listed itself in Frankfurt. So I think that is extremely important in building culture. And then, if you follow that vision, people, buy into that, and that is important. And lastly, to your point on how to be disciplined, I think that was kind of also the essence of your question. How can you ensure that you stay disciplined and rational? It's also about not just the management team and the people. It's also about the board. And I think we have a very, very solid board that shares those views and has the same view on how to build a company and how to behave. And that, again, for example, we have Dr. Axel Schröder. He's a representative of the family behind the MPC Group. He's member in the board. And he obviously has also, designed the culture of the MPC Group. And I think that is something we also find at MPC Container Ships these days.